I was working 12-hour days. I was reading pretty much every sales book I could get my hands on. I was trying new AI tools, new automations. I was obsessing over my CRM, tweaking small things, tracking everything I could. And the reality was my numbers kept getting worse. Then I discovered this 200-year-old military strategy that Napoleon actually used to conquer Europe, and it completely kind of changed how I think about goals. I also managed to double my income in about 3 months, and today I'm going to show you exactly how it works. So in this video, we're going to cover the busy work trap. I'm going to cover what is velocity, and this is a concept most people misunderstand that changes pretty much everything. Then I want to break down Napoleon's secret weapon, the military strategy that he used to build an empire, but also the one mistake that destroyed it. And after that, I'm going to show you my $50,000 breakthrough and walk exactly how I used this framework to double my sales income in 90 days. And finally, I'm going to give you an action plan so you can actually use the exact steps that I took, the lessons that I learned, the lessons from Napoleon and from war and from other great minds, so you can start applying velocity to any goal starting today. So let me paint you a picture of what my days looked like about 6 months ago. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. I'd try to get 30 minutes of meditating and exercising in before the kids woke up. Then I'd do the whole kid morning routine, getting them ready for a day in daycare, giving them food, doing different stuff. And then when the clock hit 8:30, then I'd be on my way to work. From 9 to 9:30, I do a power-up routine where I track different health metrics, I track different sales metrics from the day before. I would then go on from 9 till 10 with a 1 hour knowledge consumption or a growth block. From there, I'd do a call block, and then I'd do some admin, then I'd have lunch, then I'd do a call review, then I'd do some more automations, some knowledge consumptions, then I'd do another call review, then I'd do some more calls. And, so many different things, right? As you can hear, I was busy. I felt pretty productive. I felt like I was working harder than anyone else on my team. But here's the thing. My numbers were trash and they started pretty good, but at some point, suddenly, when things compounded, the results or our performance went to the gutter. And I was stuck in what I call the busy work trap. It's a confusing motion. It's confusing motion or activity with actual progress. So kind of think that you're running on a treadmill, but you're going nowhere. You're really, really fast, but you're going nowhere. And that's exactly the same where you're doing a ton of things, like you can see on this photo here, but you're actually going nowhere. I talked about it in a previous video where I kind of distinct three types of activities you can do: the admin, the sales activities, and the big impact project tasks or activities. And by going through this motion and seeing how my performance dipped, I discovered the difference between speed and velocity. And before going further, I want to break down exactly what is velocity so you can kind of understand the thought process that's put into it. So speed, and most people get speed and velocity wrong, but speed is simply how fast you're moving. You could be running on a treadmill, but not going anywhere. You could be doing donuts in your car, and this kind of what determines how fast you're traveling. But velocity is speed in a given direction, and it's in the right direction. So the proper term is that velocity is speed plus direction, and it measures the displacement over time. So how fast are you moving towards your goal? You can also see here, speed, you could be going around really, really, really fast, like 100 miles an hour or kilometers per hour, but just going in circles. And that would give you the idea if you're going fast, but if you want to use velocity to achieve goals or move faster toward a specific direction, then you got to think, where am I actually going? Am I using the right technique to drive? Or am I just pulling gas to the pedal and hoping it'll work? So that's kind of the difference between speed and velocity. And now I want to dive in to what happened around 200 years ago, where a young French general figured out how to actually weaponize this concept. So here we have Napoleon, and velocity, among other things, were one of his secret weapons. When he was around 26 years old, he was basically a nobody. He was giving command of a struggling French army in Italy, and he was facing a specific campaign with Austrian forces. The fact was his army wasn't the strongest. They weren't the most trained or the best trained or the most technical, and they were also outnumbered. So what do you do in this scenario? Napoleon, he knew about the concept of velocity and thought in terms of how can we utilize other things than the ones I just mentioned: speed, number, or training, number, or power. And speed is an incredible force. So if you move faster than your opponents, as well as at business, if you're faster at competing and evolving, then you will win. So he managed to focus on speed plus direction. So he would move his troops faster than anybody else in the right places, and then he managed to win a lot of campaigns. He managed to conquer a lot of Europe, as we knew back then. His enemies didn't have time to regroup or reset or their perimeters, and that also meant that Napoleon became very, very successful because he was doing something that wasn't seen before and people couldn't catch up with because he was focusing all his efforts on speed plus direction. But here's where it gets interesting. The same strategy that led to his success is also what led to his greatest failure. Because, as you can see here, Napoleon was not always this dude on a horse just vibing. He did have some failures, right? And I want to talk about when velocity becomes dangerous. How does that happen? When does that happen? And in 1812, Napoleon, he decides to conquer Russia. That's the goal, right? We have a map here where we can see his the direction he went and how he went about it. This is post the attack or the campaign, and he went with the same strategy. He had around 400,000 men. It's like a huge army, the largest army he had ever went on a mission or a campaign with. And he just went with the goal of getting as fast to Moscow as possible and conquering and making Russia being forced into agreement with France, right? So there is a problem with this, and this is why it also ended up failing. It's because the size of the army, 400,000 men, also means that the bigger you are, you can see that in business as well, but the bigger you are, the harder it is to move direction. So with size comes a problem when thinking about velocity. And when he had a big army, it was harder to redirect or correct his course. And what happened then was he went on this campaign to invade Moscow and take over with 400,000 soldiers. And when he was there, not just the war, but when he was there, he had only 90,000 soldiers left. And this is because he prioritized speed over strategy. He moved so fast, and this was also in the winter, and he moved so fast that he outran his supply lines. He sacrificed everything for the pace, the speed of things, because that had been so successful in the past. But with this large army, and there's other things that needed to be taken account for, kind of ruined the direction, because the direction wasn't just to reach Moscow, it was to conquer, right? So he ended up reaching Moscow, but he failed and he had to retreat. So when think about this, speed isn't everything. You also need to think about potentially what's the direction, how can we get there and succeed in our the goal that we have. And he essentially lost, there's a spelling mistake here, but he lost 300,000 men because of this problem. That's a big issue. And you could say here that in my case, I was also Napoleon in Russia. and I was kind of moving fast. I did have some success with all of these different things that I had implemented in my workflow. But the issue was I had no clear direction at that point, that it just rephrased in terms of how my life was looking 6 months ago. So I was optimizing, I was busy, I was doing a lot of stuff, and I was doing it really fast. I was, focused and concentrated and productive, but I was optimizing the wrong things. So here's pretty much how my busy work looked like. I had the morning routine. I would meditate. I would have a growth block. I would have a call block. I would do the admin assassin, which is basically a time slot where I execute on admin work. Still a bit approach, but as we can see here, there's a lot of different things. Do the call review, do the call block. I would do my end of day workflow. And the result I was looking at, not just because of these things, but I was looking at 60% of my quota. I was not hitting it, and something needed to change. So I had kind of my breakthrough here. I asked myself, what is my Moscow? What is my goal? Is it just to do a bunch of stuff so I can reach Moscow, or is it actually to conquer it? And of course, it's to conquer it. It's to conquer my quota. And I wanted to kind of also take a step back to think, like, what is the one thing that will allow me to hit this goal? And because I had a lot of trackers and I was able to look at the data supporting my performance, I was able to identify that the calls, the amount of cold calls I had has had the largest impact in supporting my goal. So everything else was essentially just speed on a treadmill, right? Of course, that's quite black and white, but you gotta understand that sometimes to get the best results, you really need to think do or die. What is the one thing that'll lead to 80% of my results, or the 20%, the Pareto principle? So I eliminated everything that wasn't directly contributing to my goal, and the velocity approach basically looked like this. Lead prep or knowledge, that was the first time block in my day, because I did have 1 hour before I could do the cold call. So I would always make sure that I haven't had enough leads to call. And if they were already there, I would of course consume some knowledge, because that's still a critical thing that supports my success. But going forward, then I would just have the first many hours throughout the day for call blocks. And once I had hit my daily target of calls, then I would go on to fix the admin. Of course, if there's something urgent, I would fix it. But the calls were the majority of my focus for the next 30, 60 days. And the result was pretty much that I doubled my income. I hit my 150% of my quota. And there's another thing that I also implemented that you can't see here, but it's eliminating distractions and optimizing your work environment or workflow. So one thing that I did is that I have an app called Opal, which basically eliminates social media from your phone. It was good to kind of cementing the habit of not using social media it's set to be from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. So basically it doesn't allow me to use Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, or any of the other apps, which of course helps focus on the task at hand when you're kind of trying to change your habit or your behavior. Second thing is that I would have the leads ready, so I didn't have to spend time getting that. Some small different things that can have huge impact on really getting focused on achieving your goals. So the action plan for you is quite simple. There's 3 steps. I'm going to run through them now. The first step is that you got to have clear direction. First, you got to define your Moscow. What is your actual destination? What is it that you need to do? You can't just say if you want to hit 10K or you want, let's say you want to make 10K. You can't just say you want to make 10K generally. You have to be as specific as possible, because specificity that makes you able to see what you're actually needing to do. So if I said that I needed to hit 150% of my quota, then I could kind of go back. I couldn't just say that I would be successful in sales or do good at my job. It needs to be something specific that you can kind of backtrack either with metrics. If it's weight loss, you need a specific time frame. You need a specific number of kilos or pounds that you want to lose. So be specific. Could also be if you want to create content, if you want to start investing, things like that. Just have a very specific goal. This is not anything new, but still thinking about the Moscow approach, what this destination is, and being specific, that's critical to getting past the step number one. Second thing is figure out the impact activities, the highest impact activities. What is your daily cold calls? What activity is it that leads directly? If you think about what activity is the where you give 20% and it gives 80% output, like you need to think in terms of that and prioritize impact. May take some time to figure out what exactly you need to do, if it's business, if it's weight loss, if it's investing, but take some time, go through it, and figure out the activity that can lead towards your goal. For Napoleon, his quest was to conquer. His quest was, or his, his destination or his goal was to be as successful of a leader as possible. And the thing that had the most impact on achieving this goal was speed. So he was really, really fast with his troops. And then that would support, giving him success and achieving his goals. For you, of course, it's going to be different, but just think in terms of, how history has played out, how other elements like the story I'm telling you now, how that can apply to your life. And step 3 is eliminating friction. This can be both internal, external. If we think people are, disturbing you at work, or if you have food at home, if you have a lot of subscriptions that are just paying to without thinking, I'm talking about these different areas where you can set a goal. You got to eliminate them, be aware of them, and eliminate distraction, eliminate the friction, and then you will have the clear direction with the least amount of friction as possible, and you can just get fucking after it, right? So this was Freddy Storm. Hope you found this video interesting and insightful. If so, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more multi-dimensional or multidisciplinary thinking. I have a whole book on these models, and currently I'm reading through them to kind of see where I can take models and principles from other areas that I can use to optimize my own life, my own sales performance, and so forth. There's going to be a video on activation energy soon, which is incredible in creating lasting change. There's going to be a video on natural selection, how you can, become the superior species in whatever field you are. So stay posted for that. But with that being said, create your velocity action plan if you struggle with achieving your goals and staying consistent. That's my number one wish for you today. I'm out. Peace.